If you're going to the anchor balls off of Port Everglades, you tie off to the anchor balls. If you're going to Bud Light, almost all the time anchoring is your best bet. If you're going to the bent range marker outside of Government Cut, which I forgot to mention, if you go straight out of Government Cut, right straight out the ship channel between the red and the green markers, and don't turn when the markers turn, there'll be a big tower right in front of you. And we used to call it the bent range marker, but now they straighten it up. But it's the first one right straight out the channel. And that's another spectacular bait spot. And most of the boats will be power fishing there. We put our sterns into the wind, and we hold our boats in position with our motors. But if you're not good at driving your boat, then you're best off there using the anchor as well. The one thing that I don't recommend, I'll get with you in 1 second. The one thing I do not recommend is that you take your rope and try to pull up to a marker and tie off to it. There was a very nice young man who owned a Dusky who was fishing in a Miami Billfish tournament, and the seas that day were 3 to 5 feet, and he pulled up to the marker to tie his rope to the marker and then back off and fish for bait. And just as he pulled up, a wave went by, and his bow dropped down, and actually, because the wave dropped out from underneath him, the boat slid up underneath the marker. And then the next wave came and pinned his buddy between the marker and the bow rail. And the rib that broke punctured his lung, and the kid spent a week or more in the hospital and months in recovery. And it's against the law to tie up the markers, so anchor next to the marker or power fish, but don't tie up the markers. You can get arrested for it, and it is a very dangerous proposition. So avoid that wherever possible. And you had a question there?
The bent range marker you mentioned, aren't there's 2 towers right there, are there not?
Well, there's 4 towers. There's 2 to the south, and they almost never produce bait. And there's 2 straight out. You want to go to the first one you come to 99.999% of the time. Once in a while, the second marker straight out will have some giant threadfin herring on it or some goggle eyes. But for the most part, it's like 20 to 1 the bait production of the first one as opposed to the second one. Yes, sir?
There's some balls right near the Hillsborough Inlet. Are those productive?
As far as I know, they're mostly productive for Ballyhoo, which is another bait that is acquirable from every inlet and is sometimes very, very effective. Ballyhoo are an interesting bait fish. They're kind of a double-edged sword. If, especially over the next month or so, or if you go down to the Keys, if the dolphin and sailfish are eating ballyhoo, and you'll see showers of ballyhoo, and you'll see sailfish with their fins up, and you'll see dolphin jumping behind the ballyhoo. And if you don't have a ballyhoo, you are not going to get a bite out of those fish. So there are days that if you don't have ballyhoo, you're going to be in big trouble for catching fish. Conversely, if you put a herring on the kite, he swims like crazy and attracts all kind of attention and draws fish to him. And if you put a herring out on a flat line, he does the same thing. If you put a goggle eye out, he tears up the ocean. If you hang a ballyhoo out there from a stopped boat, he'll lay there and look like a stick going, if I don't move, nobody will see me. If I don't move, nobody will see me. Well, I got news for you. I've been up here talking and making all kinds of noises, and you're all paying attention. That guy back there drinking that beer, you haven't turned around and looked at him one time, and that proves the case. If I stand around and don't move, nobody notices me. So with ballyhoo, you have to drag the baits through the water. You can use them on the kite. I've used them on the kite and caught some great fish on them. They're very good on the flatlines. They're spectacular on your deep rod, but you have to try to drag them all the time. And we had a guy here tonight named Al who was representing Jerry's Bait Clips. And if you're going to use circle hooks with your live ballyhoo, there is no better way to rig a live ballyhoo than with one of these Jerry's Bait Clips. Because the circle hook has to be in front of the bait, and you put the bait clip on the circle hook, and you just pinch the 2 wires into the nostrils of the ballyhoo, slide the rubber band down a little bit, and you've got a ballyhoo that's going to swim good, last for hours, and the hook is fully exposed to catch the sailfish or dolphin when he swallows the bait. So if there was only one use for Jerry's bait clip, you'd want to have some on the boat just for live ballyhoo, but they are very good all around. But with ballyhoo, you have to drag the bait and therefore hook them through the nostrils real good. Yes, sir?
Who's paying you to use their, let me rephrase it, what's your favorite hooks for these live baits?
The fact of the matter is that Eagle Claw, by the way, I use all circle hooks. Eagle Claw was providing me with all the circle hooks I wanted. But I wasn't happy with my catch rate with Dolphin. So my brother-in-law was making up rigs one night. I stopped by to visit him. And he had these little bitty 3/0 circle hooks sitting on the table next to him. He was wrapping wire leaders on them. I says, what are you doing with them? He says, I'm using them. I says, the hook's too small. They won't work. He says, I already caught 3 for 3 on sailfish on them. I've only been using them 1 week, and my brother-in-law was a weekend wire, not a professional. He says, they're working pretty good for me. Here's a package, try them. I use all Daiichis now. And I'll grant you, the first time I met the guy from Daiichi, I says, I won't use another Eagle Claw if you provide me with hooks, but otherwise, if I can get hooks for free, I'm going to use them and whenever I can. And he says, I'll keep you in hooks if you'll use them. And we won the Sailfish Release Award for tag and release for Atlantic sailfish of all the boats in Mexico and every place else last year using Daiichi 3/0 circle hooks. So they do, and the reason we switched was because they caught dolphins so much better. I kind of got sidetracked. We started using them for sailfish and started catching all of our dolphin. With the Eagle Claws, we were missing a lot of the dolphins. So that's the answer to your question a long way around. But we use all Daiichi 3/0s.
Now,
yes, sir.
What do you think it is with the dolphin? Because that happens a lot with circle hooks.
Well, the biggest problem with dolphin and circle hooks is that dolphin, big dolphin are no problem. Dolphins swallow the bait very, very quick. It doesn't spend any time in their mouth. And small dolphin can't pull hard enough to pull the bait back out of their stomach, so your hook is stuck in the bait and not in the fish, and when the dolphin gets up to the boat, he opens his mouth, regurgitates the bait, and you get the bait back, and he goes on and looks for something else to eat. So that has a lot to do with it. The Daiichi has just a slightly greater gap per size than the Eagle Claw, and it just somehow manages to catch the dolphin better. But if you look at the two hooks, you say they're both going to have the same effect, but the Daiichi for some reason does better. But if you're using circle hooks and there's dolphin around, you should always rig your bait in the nose, because then the hook is more clear to hook the fish. If you hook it in the back, it's much harder to hook them. So, yes, sir.
Is that a red hook or brown or black?
It's a red hook when we take it out of the package, but it's a bleeding hook.
Yeah.
So the more you use it, the less red it has. But they work good when they're red, they work good when they're gold, and when they turn brown, they're going to break if you use them. So I think they call that rust. Yes, sir.
On the ballyhoo, are you breaking the beak, or is that not a very big...
No, you should break the beak off, because you always want... And we fish all circle hooks, and when you're using circle hooks, you always want the hook to be the first thing to come out of the bait.